Hey everybody, JC here. Welcome to Rebel Soul Fuckery. I have sitting here with me today a pretty cool rebel. Ernie and I had this great conversation a few weeks back, and next thing I know, we're like, you got to be on the podcast because it's just really cool. He wrote a book actually called Asshole to Awesome, and I'm so intrigued. I want to read it. Ernie, you're going to have to send me a copy. But anyways, so I want to welcome him to the show. First and foremost, welcome, Ernie.
Thank you very much for having me back or on.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I'm so excited. So, we're really focused on stepping out, being different. I talk about woo woo stuff and being more connected on a spiritual level, and then also being very bold and rebellious. And so that was something, and we had such an easygoing conversation before. And so I'm really excited to have you with us today because I want people to understand that it's not just us women that make these shifts and connect on a deeper level with ourselves, that really strong masculine men do that and need to do that because it can make such a difference in their own lives, let alone other people's. So like I said, I'm really excited that you're not only doing the work you're doing, but that you're sitting here today talking to me.
I'm excited also, and I agree with you. It's men, we need to take a look at that a little more. Um, I think there's that time in our life though when we start wondering, like, what the hell am I doing? Like, why am I doing all this? And so many of us, we all have that little ego or that dad, maybe the dad in the back of the mind that goes, nah, you just need to push harder
Yeah.
and suck it up, sissy. Don't freaking cry about it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's not very healthy, man. That's why I wrote my book because I did not like the guy I saw in the mirror. I felt like I was an asshole. And I know that a lot of other people feel the same way.
When you can even, because anybody that follows me and has been around me for a while knows that to this day I still am a personal shopper with Instacart. I'm contracted with them. I still go do it because I freaking love it. So for some weird reason, I don't know, I don't like shopping, but I like helping other people. But I'm in the grocery store a lot when I do that. And y'all, I don't have to go to the gym because it's hard work. But people, so often they're so angry inside that they can't handle the frustration of a busy shopping experience, whether it's the holiday rush or a Friday, or where I live, it's actually a very well-known, popular retirement area because Sierra Vista, Arizona is just a beautiful space and a lot of people retire here. So when there's all those people, then you encounter these people that are just angry and they're pissy, and I am the bubbly, happy. So I'm always like, I'm navigating people. I'm like, ma'am, your cart's in the way. I'm going to move it over here. But it's usually done in such a way people are still smiling. But you see it. You see the anger, and it's like, God dang, why are they so freaking angry? But the truth is, it starts right here. It's within themselves. They don't like themselves, right?
That is the biggest thing ever. It's like that stupid analogy of, being on the plane and using that oxygen mask first and putting it on first. Because if you're not happy with yourself, it's just going to come out. Like, and that was me. I had horrible road rage. I was always nice, like, I'd open the door for people. I had like a politeness, but dude, I could be triggered like that. If somebody cut me off or somebody did something, somebody said something, and it all just stemmed from me not liking me. Like now, dude, it really doesn't matter. Like if somebody cuts me off, I just laugh. It is what it is. It's not, and you don't have to be, since you're a fucker, you say fucker, you don't have to be a pussy about it, but you can still be a man and not be that guy who loses his crap just because somebody pulled in front of you. And that is, it's to me, that's freedom. That was what I
Yes.
found. Like
Yes, because
it's
anger,
so
when your
free.
anger gets it, your anger, how do we say that? It's like your anger takes over, or gets a hold of you. But it's true, if you're not managing that, and then the anger does get control and you don't have it anymore. It's leading instead of you, and that's not what we want, right? because it fucking affects
100%.
everybody else. And yes, you can absolutely curse because we run this explicit. But it does it fucks up everybody else because you hurt yourself, but you hurt others. So when we are in a happier space, we're more connected inside here and just like more a little more chill because we don't know what's going on in Bob's life today. We don't know what Sally is dealing with today. We don't freaking know. And so when we can set that example of being happier, being more joyful, or me as a woman, what I often will do is here's a good, I'll tell it this way. I don't always do it because of this, but there was a little older lady in the grocery store one day that just, one of those times she stopped in the middle of everything. She's completely blocking the path. I'm trying to hustle. And I'm like, ugh. And I was like, And so I got up next to her and I was like, ma'am, I really, really love that blue sweater you're wearing. And it shifted my energy. And she was like, thank you. She was still in the fucking way, but why be an ass to her? Pass it on. So from woman to woman, when we compliment another woman, that's because we don't often hear that from other women. So I like to do that as well. And I think that's really important. So, yeah, we just have to set a different example. It kind of pays it forward in that sense.
100%. And you got to always think if because if you met one person, like if you met a person and you met them on the very best day of their life, right? They just won the freaking lotto, they just had a kid, their kid is, graduated, whatever, like very good stuff. Or you met that same person and it was the worst day of their life, like you said earlier, we don't know where they're coming from, but you can always be that same person, right? And I was the guy who, if I had negative energy came towards me, man, I just tumbled down with that negative energy. I let that shit go, and I was the bitchy, whiny, like we're gonna hop on this mug and we're gonna roll with it because that is some happiness right there, right?
Yeah.
But it's really not like you get excited at that moment and you might feel good, but but after you leave that situation, you usually feel like shit. Like you just
Mm-hmm.
go, damn, why? Like
Yeah.
it just was not worth it. And now, like learning that, like people are going to be who they're going to be. You have
Mm-hmm.
absolutely no control of that. All you have control of is how you respond to what's going out in the world. You don't,
Yep.
and try not to react. I think reacting causes so many of the freaking issues that we have. I mean, our governments react, our stupid news medias react. Everybody reacts, and then
Yeah.
everybody reacts to a reaction, and then you have all kinds of dumbasses doing
Yeah.
shit that nobody even knows why they're doing it. It's just because
Yeah.
everybody reacted like that.
Instead of being proactive and planning ahead and consciously choosing how to respond to something, because we do have that choice. It can be difficult and it's not going to happen overnight. It takes work, right? But we do have that choice as to how we respond to someone else's energy or a certain event instead of just being that knee jerk reaction of, you know, yeah. So, Ernie, I want to backtrack for only a second here
Sure.
because I mentioned you wrote the book, but I want you to be able to share really quickly about the book and then what it is you're doing right now too and how you're helping people. And I want to make sure people know that as we continue this conversation.
What's funny is I was just going to tie that in because what we were just
Yay.
talking about, it all starts what I found, it all starts with having the fundamentals in your like certain fundamentals in place. And so many of those little fundamentals are things that we just should be doing in general, like getting enough sleep. There's
Mhm.
so many people that don't get enough sleep that they don't even have a chance of being in a good mood because, like, without sleep, your metabolism's jacked up, your brain
Mhm.
fog, you just little things, and it all piles on
Yeah.
top of each other. So we just start. What I do is I find what happiness means for that
Mhm.
individual, right? Because every single buddy, I say this, happiness is like a fingerprint. It's unique to
Mhm.
everybody.
Mhm.
And but their happiness might be unique, but the basics are not. Like you
Mhm.
have to have enough sleep. You have to be hydrated. You have to be hydrating in the right way. You got to do, you have to have movement in your life. You got to be grateful and forgiveness and have empathy. But these are like the little things that all build just from the basics of having good sleep, being hydrated, being able to breathe correctly. And it is amazing the difference that you feel like just getting those little things. And that's all I do is like we figure out your happiness, and then we structure a plan to get the fundamentals in place, and then we build routines off of that, creating little habits, getting rid of some shitty habits, and just putting micro habits in, and you just constantly win. It's like little wins over little
Love
wins.
it.
Yeah.
I love that. I remember years ago, I went through a really ugly divorce, and I then ended up training in jujitsu. And I had a dear friend of mine at the time, and she was like, "Oh, she goes, that's just so aggressive. I think you need to do yoga," which I do some yoga, blah, blah, blah. But for me, what was bringing me back to being confident again and being my normal self was training in jiu-jitsu. And here I was training with mostly men, because anybody that knows anything about that knows that the vast majority of people that train in jiu-jitsu are guys. And so there's this tiny little 116-pound woman training with 240-pound guys. But that was such a joyful space. It became a spiritual practice for me as well. And those guys, my main instructors, as well as my teammates, I just grew and regained JC and grew so freaking much. And that was my level of happiness. I wouldn't have been as happy if no, there's nothing wrong with doing the physical aspects of yoga and the poses. I love it. It's great. My body needs it. My spirit needs it, but it wasn't what I needed to regain my happiness at that time. And so I love that you're sharing that. It's kind of like success, right? Everybody's success, what their definition of it is completely different from everybody else's.
100%. And it's so like we get so wrapped up in everybody's else's idea of
Yeah.
happiness, right? We see that shit on social media. We see everybody going on a vacation
Yeah.
and putting all their happiness out there where, now we feel bad because we didn't take that vacation or we weren't able to buy our kids the new car. And so then we go chase somebody else's idea of it.
Yeah.
We go buy an expensive car that we probably shouldn't have. And then we try to impress our neighbor who we probably don't even freaking like. Or, and we do that so much. Like people just constantly are chasing other people's definition
Mhm.
of happiness.
And that just isn't going to get, it's not going to fulfill the soul. It's not going to, it just doesn't. It just doesn't work. And sometimes, too often, that's what happens when we go choose a career path, even, right? It's what is expected of us, or it's the thing that's been pounded into your head. Well, you have to do this because that's going to make you money. I'm like, well, the end all be all isn't money. Sure as hell makes it easier, but it's not what isn't going to fulfill you here, right? Because I have been a minimalist. Now I have a big space, but for a long time I was a minimalist, and my house was tiny, and that's what I wanted, and it fulfilled me for that time in that period until I was ready to make a change. I just a few weeks ago wrote a post about that, and I'm like, oh, now I've made a change. But it's about what's going to light us up, and being able to connect with ourselves and know that, and to be able to look in the mirror and love who you are. Because if you don't love you, let me say it this way, how I always say it is, you can only love someone else as much as you love yourself.
I 1000% agree. That is 100% like what yes. And it's funny because you talked about a couple little things. Your definition of happiness has changed over
Mhm.
time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's what I find is like everybody, it changes throughout our lives. Like maybe we get more mature or we have some kind of life event. Now this becomes like what our purpose or priority is. But again, like that's why I love the fundamentals because when you have all those things in place, it is so easy to transition and you just got to do a little tweak and you move it over here. But without having the proper stuff in place,
Mhm.
you become addicted to drugs. You're on
Mhm.
prescription pills. You're overweight. You feel horrible. Your confidence is down. Everything just goes and it flows this way or it flows that way. And to me, it's a hell of a lot easier having those certain practices in place. And yeah, you're not going to be happy all the time. Shit
Yeah.
is going to come up.
Yeah.
It's going to kick you square in the nuts or gonads or whatever it is with a woman. But like, it's going to happen. Yeah, it's going to
Yeah.
happen. And the better you are with those things, the more like the easier you are to advance because like obstacles are just knowing like there are things there to let you know you're headed in the right direction. Now, I used to hate obstacles. Like anything that popped up, I was like, fuck again, dude. Like, just leave me
Yeah.
alone. Let me do this shit. Just stop messing with me. But now I'm like, oh hell yeah, dude. At least I know I'm headed.
Yeah.
I know I'm going somewhere forward because there's another stupid ass obstacle that I
Because
need to
you're
figure out.
ready to grow, because you're ready to deal with it and to handle it, and you have the experience and the skill set to handle it. So I think, I mean, sure, there's times that when we're in a really negative space and our mindset is like life just sucks and everything's going to hell in a handbasket, then we continue to attract negative things and they can
100%.
kind of snowball. But when we're growing, if everything were so freaking easy, we wouldn't grow. So when we have those obstacles, that's that opportunity for growth. And though I don't use the term God, a lot of people will say that, right? Like God only gives you what you can handle. And so it's like the universe or whatever you believe in is like, here you go, you're ready again. So here's the next lesson, right? So if we do it as an analogy of education, right? It's progress. You do this, you've learned it, now you're ready for the next thing that's a little bit more complicated, and because you already have this skill set here to support it. But you're
Yep.
like, shit, this is confusing. Well, okay, breathe and do it, and then you'll be ready for the next one.
I always say, be happy with where you're at, but never be satisfied. And and that's the way I try to look at it. Like always have gratitude for where you're at and for everything that's in your life, but never be satisfied because once you become satisfied, you just become stagnant. And then without growth, it's a whole cliche. You got to be growing or you're dying. But it's freaking true, dude. Like it doesn't matter. You can be super happy where you're at, but if you're not at least learning something, being, or helping somebody or getting better at whatever it is, you're just going to be falling backwards because the world doesn't stop, turn around and start spinning the other direction just because you all of a sudden got happy. It's
Yeah,
still going to have shit going in that direction.
it's going to happen. Yeah. So I think a great analogy that I'm linking to our conversation right now is something I talk about often, but think of a stream, right? When you have a stream or a creek that's running down, the water almost always can find its way to go somewhere. If it gets blocked up and becomes and backed up and it can't travel forwards for some reason, it becomes stagnant and there's all this debris and then it smells bad and it's just like this nasty stuff growing on it and the fish wouldn't survive if there's fish in there or whatever. But when you clear that path out, it gets to move and it will find its way around obstacles, but it's also crystal clear. It's just, it flows, it keeps flowing, and it always changes. It doesn't stay the same. So people have got to embrace change as well.
And that is a freaking awesome. And I'm going to steal that one. I ain't
Steal
going to lie.
it.
I'm writing that one down right now. But it's so funny. Water is the most awesome thing on, like, it's one of the most awesome things on our planet. There's so many things that with water, it's just crazy. I mean, just going with the hydration and how it fixes us and it helps us and builds the energy into us. Like water has memory. I mean, it
Oh,
has,
yes. Mm-hmm.
it's just amazing. But yeah, that's just awesome. I love that analogy. That's
I love it. Yeah, I've used that one for, I don't know, for a long time, but water has memory. I love that you brought that up. I remember when I was in graduate school eons ago, and I studied, of course, transpersonal psychology, but I remember, what are they called? They're called, I don't know if they're just called the grandmothers, but they're Native American. And there's a group of them. I'm going to butcher it because it's been too long since I studied anything from them. But I remember they talked a lot about the water and the importance of water and honoring the water and memory and the knowledge and the consciousness really of water. It's just such a phenomenal aspect, and it is such a vital piece of our lives today, which I know this is not going to come out for a few weeks to air on the podcast, but today that we're recording it here in Arizona, we're so freaking happy that we're getting at least a little bit of snow, because we haven't had any precipitation in over 2 months, zero. And I live at the base of the mountains, and we're like, one, the well; two, the animals that need it; three, oh my gosh, forest fires going forward. So we need water in that sense as well. And so it's in every aspect of our lives, right? That we need that. And it's about flow, which becomes about energy.
Yeah, I love the way you tied that in. That was pretty good.
I'm a storyteller.
That was that was some what do they call that? Weaving. You did a damn good
Yes.
job at that.
I kind of joke I would never make it as a politician, but I always say I could, because I can weave in shit, pivot, whatever. But I couldn't. I'm too honest. So no offense to any politicians out there. But anyway, so um, what really led you to that moment where you hit that brick wall where you just couldn't freaking do it the way you've been doing it anymore?
Um, I always tell the story. I have a road rage incident that really like locked in that I needed to change because I was already working on changing. I mean, I read 500, I don't even know, 500 self-help books. I've went to different coaching stuff, but what I always found was that I didn't know who I was. I didn't know where I was starting. I knew where I wanted to go, but like use this analogy is if you don't have like even on your phone when you put it on GPS, if you don't have your current location, it can't take you anywhere, right?
Yeah.
So I never had what I was missing. I didn't know what I knew how to write goals. I knew how to go,
Mm-hmm.
this is going to freaking work for me. And I'd get super motivated. But my internal shit was so jacked up that
Mm-hmm.
I could not get past it. And so one day I'm listening to Brian Tracy and he says,
Mm-hmm.
don't give away your emotions and
Yeah.
don't, learn how to, that is the only thing you can control. And at that same time, somebody cuts me off and I fucking lose all my emotions. We flip, I'm cutting, I mean, it's going ape shit crazy on the freeway, dude. We're like ready to fight. Get next to the dude. He has a little kid in the back of his car.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, what the hell? Like,
Yeah.
but
Mm-hmm.
I remember I did shit like that. And I was just like, all right, I got to stop. So then I went to hard work on it. And then one other time, somebody at my work compared me to this other guy that nobody wanted to be like that guy, right?
Yeah.
So I really, really worked hard at it. But what I think put the final nail in the coffin, my mom passed away last year.
Mm.
And actually, like just a couple days ago, or let's see, 3 days ago, 1 year ago, she had a stroke and she never came out of the hospital. She
Mm.
ended up having cancer ravaged her body.
Mm.
She was 14 years old when she had me, so we grew up
Oh
together.
wow.
But the bad thing about my mom is that she never got past a certain spot. Like she
Mm.
cannot forgive people. She held grudges. It was always her way or the way,
Mm-hmm.
and it was this crap that built up. And I think that's part of the reason that she got demolished by cancer. It was just she had this
Mm-hmm.
internal conflict constantly going on where she couldn't heal herself. And she cut me out of the will. So I went and I was like already on this mission to be able to forgive people and stuff. So I went in there and chatted with her. I'm like, hey mom, I forgive you, and I apologize for what I did, and I wish we never had in this fight. And she goes, well, you can shit in one hand and wish in the other one and see what fills up first. That was the very last words my mother ever said to me before she died.
Oh.
So that right there, like locked in all the
Mm-hmm.
stuff that I was doing. Like I knew that I was on the right path because I couldn't imagine going out of this world not and holding a grudge or not forgiving
Mm.
my sons or
Yeah.
forgiving somebody and being pissed off like while you're dying.
Yeah.
Like it
Yeah.
doesn't make it. So yeah, that was the final little thing. And then from there, once I had that locked in, I did a couple little, I had to do a mushroom experience that kind of helped
Yeah.
cement it, and it untied some of those knots. Now I've learned some breathing techniques where I
Hmm.
don't have to use the mushrooms as much, but like I use these breathing techniques. And we all have knots that are going to be in us because people just have shit that's happened to
Yeah.
them. Like
Yeah. Oh,
our
yeah.
parents, we were raised by imperfect parents who
Yeah.
were raised by imperfect parents. So we have just like I always say, like just putting that backpack on and just filling it with a boulder every time. And if you don't know how to take that backpack
Hmm.
off, dude, you're someday going to be weighted down and crumble
Yeah.
under the stress and bullshit that should be gone.
Oh,
You
yeah.
can't change
Totally.
anything from the past. It's
No,
done.
and that's what makes us unhealthy, and physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. That's what makes us unhealthy, and so we have to learn how to get past it. Because I reiterate that it. Well, I'll use it as an example in this one, but I had a relationship a number of years ago that I said you have to like you, because I had told him, I said, you have to, the one I said earlier, right? Where I'm like, you can only love somebody else as much as you love yourself. And I think that was, if I remember right, it was that I said to him. And then he said, I don't even like me, JC. And I'm like, well, then you can't, sure as hell can't love me. If you can't like yourself, you can't love me, your kids, anybody. And so you have to be able to set those things off. And guess what? He's had health problems, and I won't say much because it's not his business to be sharing. But it's he's had health problems and cancer and things like that. So you know, you
Again,
carry it around, it's going to do damage.
it's so amazing to be able, and again, to bring it back to the freedom thing and having those little fundamentals in place of the little things, right? Sleep, hydration, eating correctly, movement, and then on top of those, and then you add forgiveness, gratitude, and empathy. And like there's that little pyramid, and you're building that strong foundation because the biggest buildings in the world are built with the deepest, strongest foundations. And if our foundation, which many of us have horrible foundations because again, we were taught by parents that were imperfect. They were doing the best they could, but most of them didn't know shit. Like my mom
Right.
was 14, so what the hell did
Yeah.
she know, right?
Yeah. She was young. She was really young.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then
And
my dad
even
wasn't
when
a
we do, oh, sorry, go
yeah,
ahead.
even yeah. No, no, I agree. Because even when we do have that some maturity or you went to some great coaching program to be a good parent, you're still gonna screw it up. Like it's
Because
all
we have
about
our
our
own
perspective.
shit that we bring forward. I mean, I've had conversations with my sons, and they're both grown, but I mean, there's stuff, and they know the oldest one, but well, they're both pretty wise, but the oldest one is pushing 30. My God. But he's even said to me, Mom, you did the best you could, which we didn't have anything major, we didn't, but just some little things that were difficult for him, or maybe I didn't leave a particular relationship at one point that had a negative impact on him, and I didn't leave it soon enough, right? It
Yeah.
did more damage than it should have, but I didn't know. So there's not blame, thankfully. So at least my young son is like dealing, but we only do the best that we can, and we're also trying to make it through life, right? So our parents are doing the same thing. They're trying to make it through their own shit in their own lives, and we don't always know how that affects our children or our coworkers or our friends. Everybody, it flows out, or the people on the highway that cut you off that you get mad at. So I had one the other day that I was rolling into town, and it was dark out still, and it was early in the morning, and all of a sudden you see people jumping out of cars and they're pushing and shoving, and I'm like, fuck, get around them before somebody starts shooting. And I'm like, oh, because it's not a super, I mean, I don't live in a dangerous place, but it was one of those moments where there was
Yeah.
some pushing and shoving and people were mad about something from being on the road, and it's like, y'all. So, anyways,
Dude,
this is such a great conversation, Ernie. We could sit here and chit chat for a long time. There's so much to share with people, but I want to make sure people know how to find you and how they can find your book as well.
awesome. Ernestwood.com. You can actually download a free copy there. You can also book a call. We can chat and figure out if we're a good fit for each other, or it's on Amazon. And any of my profits right now, all of them go to helping this little dude that has leukemia.
Oh,
I try to just not keep any of the profits. I just use it to help somebody every time. And yeah, so ernestwood.com is the easiest way to connect with me. I'm on Facebook, I'm on all the other junk, but super easy, myname.com.
love it.
And I am looking forward to chatting with any of your people
Love
because
it.
you are awesome. It's been a
Thank
pleasure.
you. Thank you. My big ass personality. I'm all loud and crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, guys, you've got to talk to Ernie. I mean, seriously, the guys need to talk to you. You are such an amazing role model for them and a helper and a guide and a coach for them. And so I highly encourage. This is not the first time I've talked to Ernie, you guys. So I highly encourage. This is a great energy. And anybody that knows me knows that I follow my gut and my intuition. And I am, ooh, even got one of those little spiritual hits right now. But yeah, so if you guys are like, I'm wondering if I should talk to him. Yes, you should talk to him. Reach out to him because that was coming from you. Just got a download, and I don't think I've ever done that on a podcast. So there you go. You just got one today. So if this is your sign, now I sound like what's his name? Ah, not Jeff Foxworthy. He goes, "Here's your sign," but he's doing it
Oh,
when you're
yeah,
being
yeah.
stupid. But you know what I'm talking about?
Damn,
Like,
who is it? Yeah. I don't know that name. I can't.
you see his face. Oh, I feel terrible. He's my favorite one out of that group, and I can't remember his name, but I know someone will know. Everybody knows if they're a Gen Xer, I guarantee they've probably seen it or something older than us, whatever. All right. Thank you so much, Ernie. It was such a great conversation. You guys go check him out. And in the meantime, go stir up a little fuckery, but in a good way. No going crazy on the freeway.